I don't know whether I've spoken about this before, but I've just written a letter to my Eritrean taxi driver friend, the one that praised the Lord in the taxi on the way back from hospital. And his name is Jonah. And I was reading the Bible and I realized that Jonah is also the name of Simon Peter's father. And that's clarified in, I think, John, the Gospel of John, chapter 1. So that drew my attention again to Simon Peter. And I've had a bit of a revelation, I think, with respect to Simon Peter. And I might have spoken of it already to Peter. Pietra in Italian, the name means also stone, but in English it's not quite as straightforward as it, although we have got words that are related to stone, such as petrified, but the relationship is very clear in Italian. It's the same word. And Peter, I believe that Peter is the archetype of a believer in Christ, a disciple. Upon this rock will I build my church. I know that rock refers to Jesus, but it also refers to Peter because of his nature. He was a really good student because he tested the things that he was taught. And he failed, of course, as we will when we study. That's the nature of learning. If you don't fail, you won't learn. This is the problem. And so when we avoid, taking some dubious and doubtful steps, then really we're denying ourselves a learning opportunity. And Peter had the goal to step out of the boat onto the sea. And that would have taken quite a bit of conviction, I suppose, But he faltered. And then Jesus Christ taught him the essential matter of unwavering faith. And he learned it because he brought it out in, I think, the second chapter of the book of Acts, when he performs the first miracle, or perhaps the third chapter after the Pentecost, and simply stares at a guy who's, crippled in a bed, stares him in the eyes and tells him to take up his bed and walk. You can't say that to somebody if you're a bit doubtful. So Peter had learned that lesson. But he did, when they saw the transfiguration, I think it was Peter that immediately wanted to erect some form of monument or altar, or several, and inappropriately had tried to characterize the event. But again, he was learning. He had that almost childlike nature, I suppose. And he was unfaithful in the end because he denied Christ 3 times. But the risen Christ explained to him 3 times that he must feed his sheep. So, we're not rejected when we fail before God. We are given grace. It's a wonderful thing. So for me, Peter, considering in that way Peter as an archetype, and I had thought of another instance of Peter's apostleship, another case, but I can't recall it at the moment. But it fits into the general narrative of Peter's, almost like the seed that is planted on good ground and his roots. And when Jesus says, "Upon this rock I will build my church," then the rock is often and rightly construed as Jesus Christ himself. But it's just been pronounced, hasn't it? Thou art the Christ and the Son of the living God. That's the faith, that's Peter's faith has been spoken. And our church is based on our speaking of the nature of the Christ and declaring and confessing with our lips. Of course, believing in our heart. So you could say that, Peter is certainly part of that recommendation, or part of that intention that Jesus speaks. Upon this rock will I build my church. The rock of that understanding, of that type of relationship, almost. The church must be built on that solid foundation, and it is faithful to test the things that you are told. If you believe them, you'll test them out. You will do, and you will fail. It's just the nature of learning a trade, if you like. That's how I would see that. I shared those thoughts with my friend Jonah. So I don't know. He's a minister in the church, although the lessons are in the Eritrean language, whichever one it is. I don't know it. I've never been to that church, but I think he was so on fire for Jesus Christ and for the gospel when I took a taxi ride with him that day. It was just burned into my memory, and it felt like a spiritual experience. I was very inspired, and we've exchanged a couple of messages since, so hopefully my latest one isn't going to be too long, and it will be well received. God bless today.